Death row for a single murder, but by his own admission, he killed so many people over the years he lost count.
I'm after that feeling.
I woke up startled a little bit and out of nowhere, and I was kind of confused.
The window all the way up, well, about like this. And that's about it. Okay. I don't know.
10?
Yeah.
20?
Probably.
Serial slayers have fascinated the public for decades, with their brutal acts and psychological motivations explored in studies, documentaries, and films. The final statements made by these criminals before facing justice provide a rare glimpse into their thoughts, motives, and disturbed world. Early life. Tommy Lynn Sells, one of a mother's 5 children, was born in Oakland, California on June 28, 1964. He was named after his grandfather. Joe Lovins, who was believed to be Sells' biological father, passed away when the boy was just 11 years old. Meningitis struck both Sells and his twin sister Tammy Jean when they were 18 months old. Unfortunately, Tammy Jean did not survive the illness and passed away as a result of it. Almost immediately after that, Sells was sent to live with his Aunt Bonnie Walpole in Holcomb, Missouri. When he was 5 years old, his mother found that Walpole wanted to adopt him, and she made the decision to give him back to his mother. At the age of 7, Sells began drinking alcohol on a regular basis, which he obtained from the supply stockpile kept by his maternal grandpa. Within a year, he was hanging out with Willis Clark, an adult who Sells said began attacking him. Sells did not directly state when the attacks began.
Death row for a single murder, but by his own admission, he killed so many people over the years he lost count. And what makes a psychopath tick? And as part of tomorrow night's Nightline primetime series, Secrets of Your Mind.
Who have you killed?
Lord, I don't know. It's up there.
50. When I look at you, I look at hate.
When you look at me, you know what hate is.
Psychopaths are individuals who lack conscience, they lack remorse. That we find in the brains of psychopaths is that there's a structural impairment. It was structurally deformed in the psychopaths.
Sells claimed that his mother condoned their relationship, which he described as having a traumatic effect on him and serving as a detrimental influence. Sells asserted that in the future he would draw inspiration and motivation from the events that had occurred. At the age of 10, Sells began experimenting with various substances. 3 years later, he entered his grandmother's bed nude while she was sleeping, leading to him being banned from the house. Almost immediately after that, his mother and his siblings left town, leaving him to fend for himself. A few days later, he went through a rage and attacked a woman who was still alive after she was shot by him. In 1978, when Sells was only 14 years old, he began a life of nomadic wandering for good. When Sells went to see his relatives in Little Rock, Arkansas in May of 1981, his mother kicked him out of the house for making an inappropriate advance towards her while she was showering. Following that, he did not seek therapy for his mental health. His drinking got worse, and eventually in 1982, he was arrested for being in a public place while intoxicated. Criminal history and psychology. Sells, who was without a permanent residence from 1978 to 1999, traveled throughout the United States by hitchhiking and using trains while committing a variety of crimes. He was a barber by trade and also did hard labor for a few very brief stints here and there. He abused both alcohol and drugs to an unhealthy degree and spent a significant amount of time behind bars as a result. In 1990, Sells committed the theft of a truck in the state of Wyoming, for which he was sentenced to 16 months in prison. His diagnoses included substance use disorder, severe dependence on opioids, amphetamines, and alcohol, bipolar disease, major depressive disorder, psychosis, and personality disorder with antisocial, borderline, and schizoid features. He was hospitalized for treatment of all of these conditions. When Fabienne Witherspoon, who was 19 years old at the time, was driving through Charleston, West Virginia on May 13, 1992, she saw Sells begging under a bridge while holding a sign that read, "I will work for food." Sells was holding the sign when Witherspoon approached him. She was moved to compassion for him so she invited him into her home and requested him to wait outside. After going inside her house to get some food for him, she returned to the front door to find that he had already entered the building. While she was retrieving another item, he went into her kitchen, took a knife from the drawer, and then surrounded her in the bathroom before making an attempt to physically attack her.
I woke up startled a little bit and out of nowhere, and I was kind of confused. And I could see that there was this scary older man that I'd never seen before. He had a hand on her mouth and the knife on her neck, and she's heard Katie at the bottom of the bed, on the floor at the bottom of the bunk bed. She was like gasping for air, about to shut off the light, and he looked one last time, and he noticed that I was there.
The woman fought back, hitting him in the head repeatedly with a ceramic duck and getting control of his knife and stabbing him, nicking his kidney and liver. In addition, his testicle was sliced. Sells struck her with a piano stool as a means of retaliation after she had insulted him. Sells made an attempt to run, but the severity of his injuries required him to be taken to the intensive care unit and then arrested by the police. Witherspoon herself was left with significant wounds, including a head wound and a lacerated hand that needed to be operated on. After this attack, Sells agreed to a plea deal for the counts of malicious wounding, and as a result, he was given a term of 5 years in prison. During this time, he served in the military and married Nora Price, after which he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. After being released from prison in 1997, he and his wife moved to Tennessee shortly thereafter. Later on in that year, he ended his relationship with her and moved on with his trip throughout the country. History of slayings. Police suspect that Sells slayed at least 22 people, with retired Texas Ranger John Allen confirming 22. Sells claimed to have committed his first slaying at age 15 in Mississippi, after breaking into a house and slaying a man performing fellatio on a boy. This confession has not been confirmed, and in 1980, Sells claimed to have slayed a man with an ice pick near a Chinese restaurant in Los Angeles. Sells has been linked or confessed to multiple crimes, including John Cade's demise in 1979 in Mississippi and Melissa DeBoer's mother's slaying in 1982 in St. Louis, Missouri. DeBoer believed Sells, not Lincoln, was responsible for the slaying, and in 2018, Missouri Governor Eric Greitens commuted Lincoln's sentence to time served, releasing him from prison. In the 1980s, serial slayer Michael Sells was involved in several slayings and attempted self-hurts. He was found guilty of multiple slayings, including Tiffany Gill, Colleen Gill, and Suzanne Corse. In 1983, Tiffany and Colleen Gill were discovered at their house on Washington Terrace in the West End neighborhood, both battered to demise with a blunt weapon. A man matching Sells' description was seen leaving the crime scene. In 1985, 21-year-old Sells worked at a Forsyth carnival where he met 28-year-old Ina Court and her 4-year-old son Rory Court. Sells was physical with her, fell asleep, and awoke to find her stealing from his backpack. He proceeded to beat Court to end her with her son's baseball bat. He then slayed her son because the child was a potential witness. The bludgeoned bodies were found 3 days later, by which time Sells had left town. In 1987, Stephanie Kelly Stroh, 21, disappeared after leaving a Lockport nightclub alone. She was last seen at the Four-Way Cafe and Truck Stop in Wells, Nevada. Sells confessed to Stroh's slaying, taking LSD together, strangling her in Lovelock, covering her body in concrete, and dumped it in a hot spring. Her body was never found. In 1988, Kent Allen Loughton, 51, was knifed and buried in a shallow grave near a homeless camp. Sells claimed he slayed Loughton because he refused to pay for drugs. His body was found 2 days later. In 1997, 10-year-old Joel Kirkpatrick was knifed to demise in his bedroom while he was sleeping at night. His mother, Julie Ray Harper, ran to her son's bedroom, encountered an intruder wearing a ski mask, and then fought off the intruder before fleeing. The slaying weapon, a steak knife from Rhea's kitchen, had been left on the floor outside Joel's bedroom. She was convicted of Joel's slaying but was eventually exonerated. In 1997, 13-year-old Stephanie Mahaney was found in a farm pond west of Springfield, Missouri. According to Sells, he pulled her from her bed at night, drove her to a field, injected her with cocaine, physically attacked her, and strangled her to demise. In 1999, 9-year-old Mary Beatrice Perez was kidnapped from a market festival, driven to a stockyard, physically attacked and strangled to demise with her t-shirt. Her body was found in a creek 10 days later. Sells was arrested in the area around that time for an unrelated charge. In 1999, Bobby Lynn Wofford, 14, was picked up from a Love's convenience store by Sells. He drove her to a secluded area, orally physically attacked her, knifed her repeatedly with a hatchet, and shot her in the head with a large caliber revolver when she tried to escape. He dumped her body off the side of the road and kept 2 of her earrings. Arrests and confessions. Before slitting the throat of 10-year-old Crystal Searles on December 31, 1999, Sells physically attacked, knifed, and slayed 13-year-old Kayleen Katie Harris in the Guajira Bay community west of Del Rio, Texas. Crystal made it a quarter-mile to their house with a cut trachea and obtained aid from the neighbors. After being recognized from a sketch created using the victim's description, Sells was captured. Over time, police began to think that he was working the system by confessing to slayings that he had not actually committed.
I some get killed, yes.
Now, why would that happen?
Open the window all the way up, well, about like this. And that's how it is.
We talked about at the time, like Britney Spears and NSYNC, and out of nowhere, and I was kind of confused to a loud noise.
And she like jumped back, and then I cut her like this right here.
And she fell to the ground.
And she fell down right here.
I heard Katie at the bottom of the bed just shut the door, came right back towards me with the knife.
What did you see in his eyes?
To be honest, he seemed blank. I mean, you know, it was just, after what I had seen him do, he had no emotion in his eyes.
Sells admitted to several crimes and alleged slayings, none of which could ever be verified. Sells claimed that he and an accomplice kidnapped a woman in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1982, tortured and slayed the victim, then dumped her body in a quarry. Due to lack of funds, law enforcement decided against exploring the deep quarry lake Sells took them to. Sells stated that he got a call from a prostitute whose car had broken down in 1986 while he was working for Atlas Towing in St. Louis. He suggested being physical instead of paying for the towing when he got to the car. Sells claimed that after she declined, he shot her and dumped her body in a river. Sells also revealed that he met a woman and her son in Salt Lake City, Utah, and went on a camping trip with them in 1988. In Gooding County, Idaho, Sells claimed to have slayed her and her son before dumping both of their bodies in the Snake River. Sells once admitted to police that he had slain a black man and thrown his body in a Chicago skip. He mentioned the precise street intersection where this purportedly happened, but no body was ever found. Additionally, Sells said that on January 27, 1989, after a botched drug sale in Truckee, California, he slayed a 20-year-old woman whom he had initially mistaken for a man. In the vicinity at the time an unidentified female body was discovered, it was known that Sells was there thanks to a report of an unconnected event. Additionally, Sells once alleged that he slayed 2 unnamed female hitchhikers in Roseburg, Oregon in May 1989. Finally, Sells brought up a number of other victims, including several gay guys at other rest sites along the interstate in Pennsylvania, whom he claimed to have slain and thrown in the Florida swamps while he worked there.
The rush. I didn't do it for the sex. That scarf around your neck and just watching your eyes, it's sticking that knife in and just pulling and knowing it's sharp enough to just go all the way up into.
For him, the sight of the blood and the separation of the tissues after the cutting, that was the rush that he spoke about. And like any heroin or cocaine, you need to have that every so often. Those people, as you could from getting
it did not matter. Blood is blood. Tiny Tim, it wouldn't matter. Today, I might say, you know, Tommy, Dr. Stone, he's okay. You understand?
I do. That's why there's this glass. I think Sells fulfills the criteria for psychopathy to a very high degree.
In 1987, the state's attorney in Jefferson County, Illinois, decided not to file charges against Sells for the endings of the Dardeen family because his admission of the quadruple homicide was inaccurate with regard to some information that had not been made public, even though it was generally consistent with the facts of the case as they were reported in the media. Furthermore, he provided 3 different accounts of how he first met the family. In order to clear up their questions, investigators wanted to bring Sells to southern Illinois, but Texas refused, since Texas law forbids ending row inmates from leaving the state. The Allen B. Polunsky Unit, which is located close to Livingston, Texas, served as Sells's prison. He was taken into custody by the Texas Department of Criminal Justice on November 8, 2000. In 2004, Sells admitted that on October 13, 1997, he had broken into a house, taken a knife from the kitchen's butcher block, slayed a young kid, and fought with a lady. These particulars supported Julie Ray Harper's testimony, who had been acquitted in 2006 after initially being found guilty of slaying her son. Mind of a psychopath. Tommy Lynn Sells, once an innocent young boy growing up in St. Louis, claimed that at the age of 14 he developed an addiction to slaying. His chilling final statement reflects the dark and disturbed mind that would eventually lead him to become a ruthless slayer. He brazenly asked, "How many people have you slayed, Lord?" "Lord, I don't know. I don't know. I don't." 10. "Yeah, 20. Sells, who was currently on an ending row for one slaying, was suspected of being responsible for at least 17 more. His transient lifestyle allowed him to elude police for nearly 15 years, as victims were discovered from coast to coast. Psychopaths, such as Sells, are individuals who lack conscience, remorse, and guilt. It is their absence of these fundamental moral compasses that enables them to terrorize society with their heinous acts.
Sometimes with a sexual angle, sometimes without, sometimes whole families. All bets are off when you're dealing with somebody like Sells. Okay.
And I thought hard about that because it's been like smacked up inside my head the time. The drama, the reality of who I was and what was done to me.
He killed children to put them out of their misery after killing their mothers.
I had something against it. I didn't want them to carry that on their shoulder the rest of their life.
If it was just a question of putting the other person, maybe you would have gone about it in a gentle way.
Everything inside of you just ain't burning up.
Well, you mentioned about the rush,
Yeah.
and that makes a lot of sense. But I can picture the once of power over other people.
They say a woman being raped, it's all about power.
Sells has no qualms about using physical attack as a method of control before brutally cutting his victims' throats, beating them, knifing them, or strangling them. His methods were as random as the innocent people he targeted, creating a vicious cycle of violence. While interacting with Sells, it was impossible not to feel a sense of gratitude for the safety provided by the protective glass that separated him from society. His presence exuded pure hatred, which reflected in his gaze. As he looked at others, all he saw was hate, and in return, when others looked at him, they too saw hate. In analyzing Sells's final statement, it becomes evident that his mind was consumed by darkness from a young age. Research in the field of molecular genetics and brain imaging techniques suggests that psychopathy may be rooted in the brain, with some individuals seemingly born with predispositions to commit such heinous acts. However, it is important to note that not all individuals who exhibit early signs of psychopathy develop into serial slayers. The interplay of various factors, such as upbringing, environment, and individual choices, contribute to a path a person ultimately follows. Dr. Adrienne Rain has conducted extensive research on the brains of individuals scientifically identified as psychopaths.
It was the best feeling I ever had in my life. And the first time I killed, every time I did it, it was that rush again. I don't know.
10?
Yeah,
20?
probably. Billy the Kid making notches on my holster.
They lack guilt. That's one of the reasons why they terrorize.
When I look at you, I look at hate.
When you look at me, you know what hate is. No more. No emotion, no.
In the generation of emotion, It was structurally deformed in the psychopath.
One notable finding is the presence of structural damage to a specific brain region called the amygdala. The disturbing case of the Dardenne family, where a sadistic crime was confessed to, exemplifies the callous and unemotional disregard for human life that is characteristic of psychopaths. The final images of this crime highlight the lack of normal emotional responses as their eyes fade and the pupils dilate.
It's just like setting their soul free.
Are you thinking and feeling when you kill someone?
I'm after that feeling.
What happened as you were killing her? Did she give birth to a baby?
Let's not get into blood and guts.
Why would that happen?
I didn't want them to live through the pain I lived through.
Which raised the odds of an individual becoming a violent criminal offender.
This is due to the deformity of the amygdala, which plays a significant role in generating emotions such as revulsion and disgust. When asked about the experience of slaying someone, the psychopath exhibits a detached and addictive mindset. It is akin to a drug for them, as they seek that euphoric sensation once more. There is no on-off switch for their desires. They are driven by the pursuit of that sensation, even during the act of beating someone to demise. As for the specific case mentioned, a 30-year-old pregnant woman, Eileen Dardenne, was brutally slayed at home, along with her 3-year-old child. The disturbing inquiry into the details of the slaying prompts a response of pushing the boundaries, but it is wise to refrain from delving into the blood and gore. It is known that Eileen Dardenne went into spontaneous labor during the attack, giving birth to a daughter who investigators believe was alive at the time. Tragically, the newborn baby was also beaten to demise. Furthermore, the body of Eileen Dardenne's husband was discovered a day later, having been shot 3 times in the head. In summary, Tommy Lynn Sells' homicidal spree left a lasting impact on Crystal's life and the lives of the other officers involved. The investigation into Sells' actions and the consequences of his actions is crucial in understanding the complex dynamics of psychopaths and their behavior. In conclusion, the examination of psychopaths' brains has revealed structural abnormalities, particularly in the amygdala, which contributes to their lack of empathy and emotional response. The horrific crime committed against the Dardenne family serves as a chilling example of the depths to which psychopaths can sink, displaying a complete disregard for human life. It is essential to approach such discussions with sensitivity, recognizing the pain and tragedy inflicted upon the victims and their loved ones. Tommy Lynn Sells, Intentional Thoughts. There is a scale that can evaluate evil deeds, ranging from slayings committed on impulse to those committed by serial slayers, taking into consideration acts of cruelty, torture, and brutality. The field of forensics now possesses a technology that can determine who is the evilest. Tommy Lynn Sells was a unique serial slayer because he chose his victims without discrimination. He slayed men, women, and children, sometimes with a physical motive, sometimes without families, sometimes the mother and child, and he did so with complete impunity.
And that includes about everything. I mean, my God, I had, because I got bad things to say about the prison show, I got bad things to say about Execution Watch. We ran every word of it.
You ain't gonna do this until after they kill me, right?
No, I'm gonna do it while they're killing you.
While they're killing me. I understand that.
I hope you get a stay, and I hope something happens in your case. I do a show, and I'm gonna broadcast your voice while you're literally, okay? In the meantime, if anybody wants to get their hand on this thing, put my ass in jail. I ain't afraid to go to jail. Been there, have friends there. I do well in jail.
Sells is believed to have slayed as many as 70 people while traveling throughout the U.S. Tommy Lynn Sells maintains that he put his children out of their suffering by taking their lives after he had already taken their mother's life. He feels that the high he gets after slaying his female victims is a sense of power over other people, but he admits that it is sometimes more about intimacy than anything else. Because Sells put some of his victims through torture before slaying them, he places Sells in the most severe category, which is number 22 on his list. There is a terrorist component to the atrocities committed by Sells. some of which go above and beyond what you see in the crimes committed by a lot of other serial slayers. The sense of exhilaration, high-spiritedness, and delight that Sells refers to when he talks about the rush is a form of satisfaction that is nearly orgastic in nature. After the cutting, the sensation of seeing the blood and the parting of the tissues gave him an enormous feeling of satisfaction and happiness. This feeling lasted till the next time he cut anything. This high is comparable to that of heroin or cocaine, and the person who is being focused on is not the reason for it. Sells satisfies the requirements for psychopathy to an extremely high degree. This is especially true when one takes into account the essential characteristics of a psychopath's personality, which center on callousness, an absence of remorse, a lack of sympathy or empathy, and an inability to accept responsibility for his acts. Callousness, an absence of remorse, a lack of compassion or empathy, and an inability to take responsibility for one's acts are some of the fundamental personality qualities associated with the idea of psychopathy. Story of the Survived Woman. Fabienne Witherspoon, a 19-year-old woman from Charleston, West Virginia, was attacked by Tommy Lynn Sells, a notorious serial slayer who has confessed to slaying at least 50 people during his life-taking spree spanning 3 decades. Witherspoon was only one of 2 known survivors of the attack, and she felt sympathy towards him when she saw him under a bridge with a sign asking for food and showing her a photo of his wife and children. She decided to give him food and clothes from her friend's apartment while she gathered food items from the pantry. Sells had come into the house and gotten a knife, locked the door, and came up behind her. They were alone in the apartment, and she said he told her to do what he said and he wouldn't hurt her. At first, Witherspoon complied, but then panicked and looked out through the shower. She managed to fend off her attacker, wounding him in the process. Witherspoon said Sells told her he was going to physically attack her, and that's when she decided she was going to fight back. She grabbed a ceramic duck on the back of the toilet and started repeatedly hitting him over the head with the duck. In this struggle, Witherspoon managed to get the knife away from Sells and knifed him repeatedly. An injured Sells grabbed a piano stool and hit Witherspoon with force on her head. After this attack, Sells took a plea deal on malicious wounding charges and served 5 years in prison. At the time, law enforcement did not know that Sells was a serial slayer who would strike again, and Witherspoon couldn't do more about his short sentence. She felt like it was her fault that he only got 5 years, as he never wanted to be stuck in that situation again where he could be at jeopardy of being hurt, so he turned to smaller people or children after that. On October 13, 1997, just 4 months after his release from prison, 10-year-old Joel Kirkpatrick was slayed in his bedroom in Lawrenceville, Illinois, in the middle of the night. The boy's mother, Julie Ray, said screams woke her up and ran to her son's bedroom and encountered an intruder with a ski mask on. She struggled with the intruder all the way to the backyard, where he backhanded her and walked off into the night. The slaying weapon, a steak knife pulled from Ray's kitchen, was left on the floor outside of Joel's bedroom. Investigators couldn't find signs of the struggle Ray described at the crime scene. Investigators working the case found nothing had been stolen, the house was neat, and there were no signs of forced entry. Ray, who has always maintained her innocence, was the primary suspect for years. She was indicted on first-degree slaying charges in 2000. The prosecution presented a largely circumstantial case, focusing on Ray's ex-husband's testimony, pinning Ray's motive on a bitter custody battle and the fact that Ray had Joel's blood transferred to her clothes that night. Ray's defense claimed Joel's blood transferred to her clothes during her struggle with the intruder. During Ray's trial, her public defender advised her not to testify, but she argued with him about it and was told not to testify.
Just a burnout drug addict trying to make his way. I was out there in the wind.
Okay, see that
Oh, it's opened my eyes to a whole different life that I never knew about. I know I would, because the hate left me. All the stuff that was going on, I wasn't masking it no more. Just drowning out the pain of
isolated,
that's part of the record that
abandoned.
Yes.
Were you running away or just got left on the road?
Just got left out there, and I just kept defending him for myself, and a poster boy for the death sentence. I have no quarrels. And then write somebody up for sending me something to drink in the day room because I can't make store. They're going to write them up for sending me something to drink. That's a trick bag they're putting people in back here.
Well, I mean, you're on death watch. They can't put you anymore.
Well, you wouldn't think so, would you?
I remember, and I've had conversations with Wayne Scott, who moved death row over here after Garuli.
One of the witnesses her attorney called to testify was her good friend Dawn Hansel, who was asked to testify in her friend's first trial. Ray, a woman who was convicted of the slaying of her son Joel Kirkpatrick, was sentenced to 65 years in prison. After her conviction, Ray sat down for an interview with 2020, where she told her side of the story, something she didn't get a chance to do at trial. She was taken aback by the prosecutor's claim that an intruder would not break into the house with the intent to slay and not bring a slaying weapon, as Sells had done that on more than one occasion. Fanning then wrote Sells a letter telling him about the prosecutor's comments, which she did not tell him the name of the prosecutor, the name of the case, the town where it occurred, the time when it occurred, nothing like that. Fanning then wrote Sells a letter telling him about the prosecutor's comments. She wrote Sells a letter telling him about the prosecutor's comments, and Sells responded by writing, "About that woman who claimed someone broke into her house, was that, like, maybe on the 13th? I was shocked because that was exactly when that crime occurred." Fanning said she felt she had justice in her hands and had to do something. She got in touch with a Texas Ranger who knew Sells well, and based on his letter, believed Sells could have slayed the little boy. In 2003, Sells was interviewed by police and gave a detailed confession to slaying a boy and described how a woman tried to fight him off. According to Bill Clutter, an investigator with the Illinois Innocence Project, Sells recalled details about Joel Kirkpatrick's slaying that he would not have known unless he was there. Ray had been in prison for 2 years when an appellate court ruled to vacate her conviction based on a technicality, but prosecutors decided to retry the case. Ray, armed with a new defense team through the Center on Wrongful Convictions, used Sells' audio-taped confession at her second trial in 2006. The prosecution, which has always maintained that Ray slayed her son, claimed Sells' confession was a fabrication. She was found not guilty, and the state of Illinois granted her a certificate of innocence. As Ray was fighting her legal battles, Witherspoon discovered that her attack years prior was committed by a serial slayer. Witherspoon felt that if she had fought harder to keep Sells in prison, maybe Joel could have been saved. Impact of the case on society. The case of Tommy Lynn Sells, a notorious serial slayer, has left an indelible impact on society. Sells' gruesome crimes and the subsequent investigation and legal proceedings have revealed the terrifying reality of serial slayers and their potential threat to the fabric of society. The revelation of Sells' heinous acts shook communities and instilled a deep sense of fear in the public. The idea that an individual could commit such brutal crimes with apparent ease left people questioning their own safety and the safety of their loved ones. The case ignited discussions on personal security, leading to increased vigilance and heightened public awareness regarding potential dangers in their surroundings. Fear became an unfortunate but necessary part of daily life for many, altering the sense of trust and community that had once prevailed. The Tommy Lynn Sells case exposed several shortcomings within the criminal justice system. Inefficiencies in law enforcement coordination and communication, delays in investigations, and gaps in sharing crucial information among agencies came to light during the investigation. This led to a push for reforms to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of law enforcement efforts in combating serial slayers. Improved training, resources, and interagency cooperation became focal points in addressing the systemic failures revealed by Sells' case, aiming to prevent similar tragedies in the future. The investigation and analysis of the Tommy Lynn Sells case provided valuable insights into the realm of criminal profiling and forensic science. As law enforcement agencies worked tirelessly to understand the motives and patterns of Sells' crimes, they sought the assistance of behavioral analysts and forensic experts. The case contributed to the development of more sophisticated profiling techniques, and forensic methodologies, enabling investigators to better identify and apprehend serial slayers. Advancements in DNA analysis and evidence collection techniques have played a crucial role in linking suspects to crimes, resulting in more accurate identifications and convictions. The Tommy Lynn Sells case sparked significant interest in the psychological aspects of serial slayers. Researchers and psychologists delved into the depths of Sells' psyche, aiming to understand the underlying factors that drive individuals to commit such horrific acts. The case provided valuable data for studying psychopathy, exploring the role of childhood experiences, brain abnormalities, and genetic predispositions. The knowledge gained from such research contributes to the ongoing efforts to identify early warning signs and develop preventive measures against the development of psychopathic tendencies. The media frenzy surrounding the Tommy Lynn Sells case captivated the public's attention, with extensive news coverage and documentaries recounting the chilling details of his crimes. Serial slayers have long fascinated popular culture, and Sells' case added to the existing fascination. His story found its way into books, movies, and television shows, further perpetuating the public's intrigue and curiosity about the minds of these slayers. However, it is important to approach such media portrayals responsibly, ensuring a balance between entertainment and the ethical considerations surrounding the victims and their families. Last words. A Del Rio judge scheduled Sells' ending for April 3, 2014 on January 3, 2014. At the Texas State Penitentiary in Huntsville, Sells' ending sentence was carried out. When asked whether he would like to make a closing statement, Sells responded, "No."
I was going to say, come on now, Ray.
I'm 73.
Yeah.
And thought I did a good job. Excuse from watching Prison Show?
Well, the
We'll do that.
execution watch. The
Okay,
execution
tell me
watch.
about it.
What's on the record, what we go by.
You'll see me step in every once in a while and challenge it,
It don't happen often.
the record. I do know what's wrong with the record. If you read the newspapers, all you got to do is say there wasn't an arson, so that doesn't come out. It's in the newspapers this week.
Or the jailhouse snitch.
Yeah.
There wasn't no confidence
It wasn't
about
okay. It was,
He
it
got
was
up
a
there
bald
and-
snitch.
Yeah.
He took a few deep breaths, closed his eyes, and snored as a deadly dose of pentobarbital was injected. He stopped moving after less than a minute. He was declared dead at 6:27 p.m., 13 minutes later. Members of the Harris and Perez families, as well as Crystal Searles, were present for the ending. Tommy Lynn Sells and psychopathic traits. Tommy Lynn Sells exhibited several psychopathic traits throughout his life and criminal activities. Psychopathy is a personality disorder characterized by a lack of empathy, remorse, and conscience, as well as manipulative and impulsive behavior. Sells' case exemplifies the dangerous potential of these traits, combined with a propensity for violence.
Now, my first question to you.
Yeah.
If I've heard you say over and over times, you know yourself that record would be wrong.
Because
I thought we was going.
Okay. Now, arrangement said it will not be broadcast unless you are on the gurney and the process has begun.
Yes.
The interview begins.
Yes.
Okay. Now, before you get into what you were doing, and you came out of Del Rio, Texas.
Del Rio, Texas.
And you live in Del Rio, Texas. Where you from? We interviewed Gypsy Childs down here before. What were you doing out Del Rio? You lived on the road everywhere.
Yes.
Psychopathy is characterized by a lack of empathy, superficial charm, and manipulation, which can lead to a brutal attack and slaying spree. Sells' charismatic and superficial charm allowed him to manipulate and deceive others, gaining trust and exploiting vulnerabilities. His impulsive and reckless behavior allowed him to continue his slaying spree for an extended period, evading capture. Psychopaths often display a lack of long-term goals and responsibility, focusing on immediate gratification and personal gain. Sells exhibited this trait by engaging in impulsive and violent acts without considering long-term consequences or the impact on his own life. Deception and pathological lying are common characteristics of psychopaths, who are slayed manipulators and pathological liars. Sells' ability to fabricate stories and provide false information contributed to his evasion for justice for a considerable period. Understanding these traits can contribute to the identification and prevention of potential offenders and inform efforts to improve mental health interventions and rehabilitation programs for individuals exhibiting psychopathic tendencies. That's all for this video, folks. We'll see you next time.